What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassity. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In-N-Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. Welcome back, Nightmare Success In-N-Out listeners. This is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Hey, don't forget out there to hit that follow button, subscribe, share, like, comment. I appreciate all that. Very grateful for that. So folks, I've got another great guest. If you guys have been following along, we've had a string of them here. So, I always think it's interesting because some of these guests, I've so identified with how they went through things. And, one of them is what happens when you work your way through and get to the American dream and then it just completely crumbles around you and you have to figure out how to survive it. And my guest, Bill Carlson, he started as a stockbroker in 1986, did really well, did so well that he was able to establish his own investment firm in 2004. He was even able to name that firm after his grandfather, Victor. And he had gotten to where he wanted to be. He was in the American dream genre of the children going to private schools, living in an affluent neighborhood, having a vacation home. And he says that, however, the allure of the recognition of the material possessions clouded the true essence of his achievements, leading him to a series of ill-justified decisions that set off a chain reaction of consequences. This journey serves as a narrative highlighting the pitfalls of equating success with external validation, which I think that's so true. I mean, I think that success can cause blind spots in our lives. I think that you can get to a certain point and you can just be blinded by things. And when you look back on it, you think, wow, what happened? Well, in 2017, everything caught up to Bill and he was sentenced to federal prison for mail fraud. During his time behind bars, he embarked on a profound journey of self-discovery, and he was driven by a fundamental question posed by his daughter. Dad, what were you thinking? And it really caused him to reflect on everything that happened and how he made the choices he made, the motivation behind the choices that he made. But he had to figure a path forward. And Bill today, he channels his experiences into empowering audiences of all ages with invaluable insights gleaned from his personal odyssey through a blend of lived experiences, research-backed knowledge, and candid storytelling. Bill inspires individuals to navigate ethical dilemmas, cultivate gratitude, and embrace a holistic approach to life's challenges. So I think it's so great when people can take their journey, take their experiences of what they've lived through, what they're living through, and give it to other people to help them. I can't wait to unpack all of this with Bill. Before we do, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. Who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots, looking for a car? Then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle of getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge, the new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Okay, Bill, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Brad.
We probably should have hit the record button about 15 minutes ago. We had a good talk. Sometimes I think, when we do that, I think that I should probably hit the record button so I can go back and edit and do. But Bill, you have been and I do identify with your journey, and it's always interesting to sit in my seat when I interview, and I can identify with so many things that you went through. But um, walk us back a little bit. What growing up, the Bill Carlson growing up as a kid, what was going on in your world?
I mean, I grew up in the city of Chicago, and for those of you that are familiar with the city, I grew up about a mile from Cassity Park, which today I think they call Beardsy Raider, whatever they call it. I still call it Cassity. And we lived in a three flat. That's a 3-story building with 3 apartments. My grandparents owned the building, and they had 3 daughters. One aunt who never married lived with them. My mother and our family lived on the 2nd floor, and then their third daughter and their one child lived on the 3rd floor. So the drawback to that was there was always family around, so it was really hard to get in trouble because there was always a babysitter. But it was, it was a lower middle class neighborhood. But I had parents that were always there. I went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, got to go away for college. So it was, I grew up with every blessing you could have as a child. It's not that we didn't have a lot of money, but we didn't know we didn't have a lot.
Right.
You ate, you knew your parents loved you. We had a small summer house in Wisconsin that my grandmother, my dad's mother, had given him. Didn't have running water. Go up there and go to the park and fill up buckets of water, but it was awesome, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Was your school like high school? Was that pretty normal? Did you play sports? Did you hang? Was it all kind of just everybody in the neighborhood?
1,600 boys.
1,600 boys.
Yeah, and I played ice hockey, and fortunately, we had an all-girls school right next door. So you had to wear a tie.
Yeah.
The months of September through April. So
Okay.
August and May, you didn't have to wear a tie, but you had to wear a collar. Hair couldn't touch the ears. We had brothers and laymen, and they would tune you up if you got out of line. I mean,
I know that world. I went to DeSmet here in St. Louis, so it was all boys school, and yeah. In the 80s.
I learned it a few times, and a few times I should have, I did. But so when I look back at this, Brent, I wish there was something in my background that I could say, well, that was kind of the catalyst for this. But
yeah.
And you and I, as we've talked in our conversations, we've met so many guys that were born with 2 strikes against it.
Right.
And they had to say a Sandy Koufax on the mound. And you and I had every opportunity. And we ended up wearing the same crappy green uniforms that they did. So
yeah, with a number. Yeah. So when you got out of high school, went to college, did you have a plan? I mean, did your parents go to college, or were you one of the? So you were kind of the lead. You had siblings at the time.
Younger brother,
younger siblings. So you were the oldest.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So I was the first, actually, in a large part. Most of my family members, or extended family, cousins and so forth, were tradesmen or laborers. So I was going to go to the University of Illinois, and senior year in high school, I went with a buddy of mine to his aunt's house in Scottsdale. We went over to the campus at ASU. I got to say, I saw things that I never seen.
What in the Midwest?
From the Midwest. So I actually went over to the admissions office and applied. And I went for Arizona State. Just because I wasn't going to play hockey in high school. I wasn't a Rhodes Scholar candidate, but I knew going where it's warm and all the pretty women, that would be
good choice.
Yeah. So I went out to Arizona State, which at the time I remember being out there and being homesick the 2nd or 3rd week and calling my father and saying, hey, I'm going to come home. He says, no, you're going to gut it out for the first semester. And if after the first semester, you're unhappy, then come home. And I was upset. What does he know? And as in many times in my life, Brent, he ended up being right.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't know it. So I stayed. And when I graduated, I went, as you mentioned, I went to started as a stockbroker.
Now, did you going into that, Bill? Did you because a stockbroker, you got to be pretty good with numbers. You got to know something a little bit about the finance. You also got to have a kind of a sales piece to you. Um, was that something you were drawn to of somebody that you knew, or was it just something you thought, I got all those boxes checked. That's what I should be.
Well, the truth is, at least back in the day, you had to be about 30% finance, 70% sales.
Mm-hmm.
Because 5 to 6 days a week, my day entailed making about 200 cold calls a day.
Mm-hmm.
That was the day you're nodding your head, we're about the age, and if you were in anything back then, you could cold call.
Right.
And I didn't have money to buy lists, so I'd go down to the ASU library and photocopy pages from Scottsdale, Nice Mesa, Tempe, some of the nicer areas, and just start pounding the phone. And 200 calls or so a day, you hoped 7 to 10 people said, yeah, I'll be interested to hear from you when you have something.
It's a good education, though, and a ability to take rejection. I mean,
oh man,
I did that when I think I was 16 years old, and I was helping out my dad who had a company, and I was making sales calls to set up appointments for his salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how you really do learn a certain rhythm and flow to, like, one of the things that I learned was that I continued to use as an adult as we were building the company is I found out that if I called somebody on the phone and I apologized to them first, just apologize, Bill, hey, I'm sorry. I was supposed to get to you yesterday and drop this information off. I ran out of time. What would be a good time to come by and bring that to you, the morning or the afternoon? And it confused them because like, you're late. You should have already, and it was my percentages went way up.
Yeah,
But
really.
the only way that I ever knew that any of that was workable was that I was on the phone getting rejected, and I just kept trying out different speech patterns that, you just kind of fall through the doorway on one of them.
Yeah, no, you become resilient, and you have to learn early on that they're not rejecting you.
Right.
That's
It's not personal.
Many of them, if they saw you on the side of the road, would stop and help.
Right.
Darn it, I have some of these nice old retired grandmothers say stuff to me that, you wouldn't think my old hockey coach would say. So
yeah, right. So you get along on this way, but you actually, as I read your bio, you did well. You started progressing in this world that was one that
I didn't want to.
The reason I say that, Bill, is it's one of those worlds where a lot of people don't, and that told me a lot about your resilience and in your personality, because there's a big failure rate in that world.
Yeah, and as I explained to people later on, it's like a funnel. It has a very low barrier to entry, right? If you get hired, you can start making phone calls. And you have to pass a series of different securities tests. So you have to have some basic comprehension ability. But as long as you could make phone calls or make sales calls, you can make it. But, it's a funnel. So a lot of people are in, but after 5 or 10 years, there's fewer and fewer people on the bottom.
Right.
And that's why it tends to be such a lucrative career, because there's such a high failure rate. And you just keep going. And my father wanted me to become an engineer. I was in the School of Engineering at ASU for 2 semesters, and the university and I came to an agreement that wasn't the best place for me. So I actually transferred over to the business school without telling my dad. And that first semester back, which was the Christmas semester, sophomore year, he's looking at the report card, and he said, "Boy, there's a lot of business classes in the School of Engineering." I said, we should probably talk about it. And we did, and luckily I had good grades. And he said, well, I hope you're making the right decision. And so that was really one of the motivators, that if I failed, Brent, he would have said, well, I told you shouldn't have done it.
I told you so.
And, from our conversations, you saw your father was a very driven person as well. So there may have been those types of situations where you wanted to succeed, not only for yourself, but to show him that.
That's right. You belong. Yeah.
Yeah, you belong. So
as you went along, when did the family life come around? As you were growing this, did you get married?
Yeah, I'll try to keep this, and I can get sidetracked. So if you need to bring me back, please don't hesitate.
I'll try the best I can, Bill.
Yeah, I give the War and Peace version, not the Reader's Digest. So, I ended up moving back to Chicago in 1990.
Okay.
I had become homesick. I was dating a woman. We were serious. I didn't see myself raising people in Phoenix at the time, although there was good boys' school, Brophy, and I can't remember the all-girls school. But so I had a job opportunity through a family friend to come back and work at Harris Bank. Actually, it was to work for a company back in the early 90s. Banks couldn't sell annuities or mutual funds.
Right.
So they had to go through a third-party firm. So I had the opportunity. They had the Harris account down in downtown Chicago, right on LaSalle and Monroe. So we moved back in 90. My wife at the time, she wasn't my wife. My girlfriend was from Texas, and she didn't have much of a family connection there. So anyway, we moved back in 90, worked at Harris for a while, and then another bank. And then actually in 1998, I became the 11th salesperson hired by Fisher Investments.
Mm.
So, and that was a huge jump because at the time, Fisher isn't what it is today.
Right.
And they did whole junk mail to rich people, as they'd say. And you'd get leads faxed to you in your home. So it was but my father's been an entrepreneur. And the thing to take away from here is I've always tried something. Said, what the hell? Let's give it a try, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did that, had young kids. And then in 2000, I decided I wanted to go on my own. I wanted to use a lower cost approach to investing, similar to the firm that's in St. Louis, and it's escaping me right now. Buckingham?
Yeah. There's Buckingham.
Similar to the approach that Buckingham uses. So in 2004, my kids were 10 and 8. I said, let's do this. Let's give it a try. If it doesn't work, I can always go work back at a bank.
Sure.
I mean, no disrespect to people that work in banks, but I could do that if I had to
jump back into that role. Right.
If I had to pay the mortgage and feed everybody, I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
you jump in that world, Bill, and as I can tell, things went well. I mean, you grew. Looked like you merged, and life began to be good. You moved into affluent neighborhoods. Your kids were, in the right schools. You got yourself a vacation home. What happened?
Well, it's interesting. You asked that question, what happened? And as you read part of the bio, the question from my daughter, Dad, what were you thinking? I started to tear up again when you mentioned it, because I remember specifically, and I'll go back to your question, they were both away in college when this all came to fruition. Mm-hmm. It was February of 2017. He was a senior, she was a junior, away at school. And I didn't tell him at first what was going on, hoping that there wouldn't go away. Night, right?
Yeah.
You got to hope.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise. So I called them, and I remember like it was yesterday, Brent. I was in the local grocery store chains. In the parking lot, it was February, it was snowing. And I get them both on the line, and I said, here's what I've been doing. I've been taking money from one of my client accounts. I've been indicted. I'm most likely going to prison. My son swore at me and hung up. My daughter just started to cry and hung up. And the next day, she sent a text, and it simply read, Dad, what the hell were you thinking? Mm. And that was that life-changing moment. But so let me go back.
And Bill, I know a little bit about your story too, so I don't want to jump ahead of you, but I think it's interesting too, though, when you were in that world of being in around the rich and everything's moving and things are good. I also think that there's a way too, that there's you can justify certain movements. And I think one of the things that you were talking about is, I could just take this money here. This is a good investment over here. I could get this business going. I'll put that right back. And as things move and grow and do, you start to rationalize things that aren't what they should be.
You're rational.
Right.
You rationalize. Yeah. And that's how it started, is I had a business opportunity that I was confident was going to make it. And I'd been a little, I don't want to say souring on the investment business, but it wasn't as fun as it had been there was a pressure on pricing, and so my plan was if I could get this business venture off and it does well, I could sell some of my book to my existing partners, keep a handful of the clients who I really had just a wonderful relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
That was the plan. So I knew taking money from the client, and if it took off, I would make more money than I could probably spend.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't take off, and I knew when I took the money it was wrong. It wasn't the way I was raised. It wasn't the way I raised my children. But as you just said, you kind of justify it. As messed up as that is. As my daughter said, what were you thinking?
What were you thinking?
But you justify it. And then the business started to fail, so I put some more money in, and I put some more money in, and the business failed. And one of the many mistakes I made along the way, Brent, I didn't have the courage to go to the family and say, well, we can't live this way anymore.
Right.
We got to stop the lifestyle. And as you referenced, and the things I learned afterward about myself, I equated money and possessions to happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And as you and I have learned,
very common.
Yeah. And so I put, if I could, and then you get so far, you're like, I know how this is going to end, but I'm just going to ride this a little bit longer. And when it ends, it ends.
Mm-hmm.
So
when did you know, because everybody's got a different way of how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
When did you know that things were getting to the point where this could turn into a criminal investigation? They were looking at you. Was it a knock on the door, or how did it come to you?
So if I made any good decisions along the way, it's that I only did this only. Shouldn't say only, but it was one client account. Mm-hmm. And the client account was getting low. Now, another thing that I'll have regret for forever, the client trusted me to the extent that she never even opened her statement. Whenever she'd question me on something she got from the custodian as to why, I would give her an excuse and she'd listen. So the fact that I preyed on that trust is regret that I carry forever.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, that wasn't part of my DNA. So I got to the point where her account was low. I either had to take from another client or we had to end it. So I went to the partners and said, here's what I'm doing. I resigned, and they wanted to go. They went to her with the hopes that they could settle with how much I had taken and it not become a public issue, because it was not only bad for me, but it's bad publicity.
Right, for the firm.
Right. But she did the right thing, and she went to the custodian and said, here's what's been going on. And the custodian then opened up an investigation, and then the FBI got involved. And they got involved fairly quickly. And I was meeting with two of my ex-partners one afternoon about 2 weeks after I had resigned, and I met them in a parking lot at a small strip mall. As I'm walking back to my car, a man and woman approached me and said, we're with the FBI. I would like to ask you some questions. And I said, okay. And so they were going to take me to this restaurant. I said, I really don't want to go in there and talk. It was like a sub. I said, if you have a vehicle, let's go in the car. And I just opened up. I just said, here's what I've been doing. I've been doing it. I mean, I was crying, not because I felt bad for myself, because it was just so embarrassing. And you knew the shoe was going to drop. And it was dropping. Yeah. So we had about a 1.5 hour conversation in the car, and I basically laid out the mechanics of what I was doing and how I was doing it. And that it was only, the one person. And that was a Thursday or Friday. The following Tuesday, I got a call from the one agent, and he said, we'd like you to come in for some more questions. I said, am I going to be arrested? He said, no, that's not how this works. I said, because if you are, I got a dog I got to make plans for. I can't leave him. And he says, no, you can come in. Mm-hmm. So I did. and they asked more questions, and they had some of the paper, had some of the hard data. I said, "Yep, that's my signature. I did that. I forged that. That's my signature." I was there about an hour or two, and then went home.
So you didn't have an attorney or anybody involved in that from
Not
the
at
legal
that.
side for you?
Maybe I should have, but you
Yeah.
know, what? One of the things I learned along the way, talking to other guys that've gone through the process, there's no training for this.
No.
Yeah, it's
There's no.
TV, they know, but
This is chapter 3.
yeah,
Right.
you think. I thought, okay, if I cooperate fully, then whatever the punishment's going to be will be less because he cooperated, right?
Right.
And
Right.
as we both know, or in the scoring system, you get a few points for that.
You
but
do.
not thought of.
Yeah, a couple of points to give you, which can make a difference in some cases.
Yeah. So did I answer that, or did I get off?
Yeah, no, that was good. And before we get into, because I want to talk about the next step that happens, but before we do, I want to recognize we've got a new show sponsor, and it's a guy I know that I like a lot. He's actually helped me out with my new website. But for those, many of the individuals think that there's no hope when it comes to managing your reputation online. Well, there is hope. It's called Online Reputation Solutions, and they can help you whether you're building a reputation from scratch, repairing your search results after a negative news story, or even if you're just trying to position yourself a little bit better against your business competition. Online Reputation Solutions can also help how you're being portrayed on popular AI services like ChatGPT, which is a whole new thing. I actually put my name in there the other day. I was shocked at how it comes out. But interesting. To learn more, visit onlinereputation.solutions. It's not .com, it's .solutions. Onlinereputation.solutions. They're even launching a do-it-yourself SEO option, a course for individuals who want to take on their search results on their own budget and speed. Listeners of Nightmare Success can take $100 off the DIY SEO service with coupon code Nightmare Success. So check this out. Drew Chapin is a guy that knows his stuff. He's a good friend of mine, and I think a lot of him, and he knows what he's doing. So if you've got online reputation problems, and some people on here that listen to this show just might check out online reputation.solutions. And not to forget, this show is sponsored by the White Collar Support Groups devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. The meetings are on Zoom, Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. I am a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you that this is a whole bunch of people who help each other navigate through the criminal justice journey. Whether you're just beginning or you've made it through to the other side, this is great space for you. For free. For information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. Don't forget, the White Collar Conference is October 19th. To go register, go to the whitecollarconference.com. So, Bill, you go down there, you talk to them, you basically pour your soul out. What do they? Do you just walk out and say, "Okay, guys, I'll see you later"?
Well, yeah. I mean, I still thought I was going to get. Still thought I was going to get arrested, right?
Right,
I thought
right.
he's lying because if he says that, I'm gonna.
Right.
But I walk out, I go home, and I don't recall how I got noticed that I had to appear in court that I was being indicted. But
how does your wife take all this? Is it a surprise?
We've been separated for a while.
Yeah.
Her natural reaction was, "How's it going to affect her?" And
Yeah.
I can understand that.
Sure.
So.
And your kids, they were supportive, but couldn't
Oh
believe it
no,
had happened.
they were very upset with me.
Yeah.
So no, there was.
They couldn't figure out why.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not how we were raised.
Loved you, but couldn't figure out why.
Exactly.
Right.
So, I got indicted, went down to the. I was supposed to have an attorney with me, so I knew I was guilty. Here's another mistake I made. I knew I was guilty, and I knew I was going to most likely be going to prison. So I figured I'm not going to spend money on an attorney because I'm just throwing money, and
Or you're going to plea anyway.
I'm going to plea. So I went with the public defender. And fortunately, I was able to qualify for a public defender, which was a surprise, but I did. So I first went down when I went for the indictment. They said, you're indicted and the charge is 1 count of mail fraud, and it serves up to could be up to 20 years. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, I take your breath away.
Yeah, it did. So I got appointed. I went through the process, got a public defender, and went through. This was February, March. I first pled not guilty because that's what he said you do. That was March, April. And then we went through the summer. I eventually pled guilty in August of 2017.
Okay. So it went pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, I wanted not to because I just wanted, let's get this over.
Get it going.
It's kind of like when you were a kid and you're going to get punished. Let's just get it over.
Let's get it going.
Spanking or if it's grounding, let's
do it.
Let's get going on this. And, like a lot of us do that had never been in prison, we start searching and looking at all what prisons do you go to, and I was relieved to find out I'd been going to a camp. And then we did our pre-sentence report. And the way he prepared me for it, he said, this is your time to tell your story. Well, as we learned afterwards, that's probably not the best advice going into the PSR. So went through it. She came out and her recommendation was not to vary off because good or bad. So I was in for sentencing on the day before my birthday in December. And my range was 51 to 65 months, 60 months. I forget what it was.
About 5 years.
Yes. And the attorney said
they do it in months, so it's always it's confusing when you get sentenced because you have to back out. Okay, let's see, it's 36. No, that's 60, and then 120. That's 10. You're like,
especially when you hear the guys that get big numbers, triple.
Yeah, right? No, it's scary. They don't do it in years.
No,
months.
They do it in months. So I got. Before I went in, we had the meeting with the attorney. My dad, he was supportive. He was a parent. He was supportive through the whole way. And so was my mother. And he said, we think you're going to get 1 year to 2 years. Just even though I knew what my range was, he kept saying the judge can vary from that. You don't have record. He's cooperating, blah. Well, the judge says you got 55 months. That's a little bit more. Math wasn't a math whiz, but that's more than 1 to 2 years.
That's more than 1 to 2 years.
So I was scheduled to self-surrender on January 22nd of 20. So
what was going through your mind, Bill, the day before you're getting ready? Because everybody's kind of got a different story about that. But what was going on inside your head?
That's a good question. Maybe you're so afraid of the unknown.
Yeah.
I was pretty confident there wasn't going to be violence because if you can get moved to a low.
Yeah.
The stuff you think about, the sexual, there wasn't going to be that.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
No, it's the unknowns. I mean, I often talk to people because of this show. I talk to people that'll call me and ask me questions that they're getting ready to go in. And I say, it's really something in my experience, even if it was really bad news, it was better than the unknown because I could start working through that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The unknown is the scary part. The unknown is the thing that's the most fearful because your mind can make it out so much worse than it can ever be. And, I'd just rather know what it is so I can start biting that off and dealing with it, even if it's really bad.
Right.
Because whatever the unknown is worse.
We tend to, as humans, a lot of time we will go through and make it worse than it is.
Yeah.
Why we do that, I don't know.
Nothing as bad as your mind makes it out to be, not even prison.
So my father drove me up to Duluth, which is a 6-hour ride from Chicago. So that was a Tuesday. I had to self-surrender. We drove that Monday. I may have mentioned this to you in one of our talks. We ended up driving through one of the worst snowstorms in central Wisconsin in like 10 years. Mm-hmm. We were doing 20 miles an hour at some point, and you just couldn't see. And I said I said, isn't that the irony if we get in an accident and die driving to prison?
Yeah.
Or what if we get stuck? And,
Can't get there.
if you don't show up, you're not there.
Yeah.
You're supposed
It's your
to be.
designated time.
Yeah. We got through it, fortunately. I went out and had a nice dinner and got up the next day, and I actually had steak left. Sat down. I couldn't eat. I was so nervous.
What was your dad talking to you about?
He wasn't talking much, which is unusual because he's a talker. It was just kind of quiet.
It was probably tough for him. I'm sure he looked at you as his oldest kid and had done so well, and probably just he was sad that you were having to go through it.
Well, like two interesting points on that. One is when I got out to get out of the car and give him a hug goodbye, he kept his sunglasses on, and I believe he was crying. I don't have proof, but I think there was a sadness, and he a few times when we would talk when I was away, he would say how he blamed himself. I said, "Stop! I'm a 50-some-year-old man. Don't do that." I mean, so yeah, you know it's serious when you go through and the door slams and they say, "Okay, strip and spread your cheeks, squat and come." You're like,
that's when you know that you're getting
not Kansas anymore.
Right, you're getting prisonized.
Yeah.
So tell us about that, Bill. You walk through, you strip down.
Yeah.
Your first day. How do you walk through it?
Well, you go through the processing, and it's pretty, not eventful.
I'm sure you've never been in a situation like this.
I've never been handcuffed to my life.
Right.
I still hadn't been handcuffed through the whole thing.
Right.
Maybe a speeding ticket or two along the way. But so they sat with my counselor, which was really a misnomer, as we learned, right? I walked through, and he asked you a bunch of questions, and you go over to medical and go through that. I realized I was in a different place when I sat down with the dentist, and one of the first things he said is he's got all his teeth as they're taking notes. I'm like, okay, right? Also, most people, maybe if you lost one or two, anyway. So the first room,
they just pull teeth when you get there. I
they
saw
do
so
that.
many guys the tooth probably came back without a tooth.
Yeah, there is that story. The first room they put me in was a 6-man room. I was the 6th man, and I'm pretty sure not one of those other guys were white collar offenders. So over time, the guy that I was on top of him, I was bunk on top of him. Great guy from Chicago, started in the USP and worked his way down over the years. The first couple of days, he kept me from doing really stupid stuff. You just don't know. Like when I went to the laundry to get my clothes, when I came back, I had the bag and I set it on its bed.
Right.
Bill, you never cook.
Don't do that.
On another man's bed.
Respect.
So he worked.
Those are the inmate rules. They give you the prison rule handbook, but the inmate rules are what you have to live by, right?
And when I tell people, it's akin to being a newborn on a new planet.
Yeah.
Because all the norms that you and I and most of us that haven't been incarcerated are familiar with are thrown out.
Right.
And things that don't make any sense at all are the unwritten rule.
Yeah.
And
primitive environment.
Also, we talked about this. You find people that are very kind, and it's surprising. You get there, they give you those slippers, the blue slippers, and I'm in Duluth, Minnesota. It's January, so it's probably 0 or worse outside and snowing, and you've got and the super lightweight clothes. You got guys giving you shoes, giving you sweatpants, a sweatshirt before you can get the commissary and buy things. And I have some good friends that I met up there, and we talk not regularly about the experience, but we talk it's almost like it's a different life at some time. It's almost because you think back to those days and how, scared or how unsure you were, but you got through it. And,
well, you and I were talking about that before we got on, Bill, that where we were in life, you kind of thought you were at the top of the heap, and then you end up sitting there that first day and you realize that you realize that you have a bunk bed, a locker, and a plastic chair. But I think that's what you really learn about yourself is that you can adapt and you figure it out. But it's quite a dramatic change.
Yes, and part of the when I talk is what I learned is I was happier having less
Mm-hmm.
in that locker than when I had all the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that I could have, and that's when it really dawned on me, and as I started to do the introspection and research, that happiness wasn't coming from things; it was coming from within.
What more than?
So you learn to be very early on. I started a gratitude journal, and it wasn't my idea that gratitude journals have been around for a long time, but I looked for three things every day I was grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
I kept them, and I go back every once in a while and look at things that I was grateful for. You saw bird chirping, which in the Lewis is something unusual because October through April,
So cold.
cold. We had my first April up there, we had 14 inches on April 15th, 14 inches of snow.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean,
So what did you get? How did you get involved with? You find your way around. They kind of give you the inmate rules. How did you do your time?
busy. You have to. I could never understand the guys that would sleep all day or work as little as they could.
I agree.
So I mentioned to you, I taught GED for 16 months, and outside of raising my children, it's really some of the most uh, rewarding work I've had
Yeah.
in my life.
I bet that did fill you up. That would be something, knowing that you were helping people get something that they were not able to attain, and you're helping them attain that in prison, has to be a good feeling.
You get guys that most of the guys that we had in the class were from the west side of Chicago, south side of Chicago, or for some of the rural areas, Minnesota, the Dakotas. So people I would have never run across in my life. And when you get a guy that's been trying to pass his GED for years and he helps you pass and he hugs you and there's tears in his eyes,
Yeah.
so now he's going to send that diploma home to his mother or to his daughter.
Something to
And
be proud of.
I still get chills when I think about
Yeah.
it. And I told the story the other day. Almost every guy I had in classes had been shot at least once. I mean, that's when it really hits you how different our worlds were,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, I didn't know anybody had been shot.
No, you're living side by side.
And I didn't huddle with Dick Cheney, so I got flipped by Cheney. So so to answer your question, you get up early, go breakfast or chow. I go to work. Between lunch, we'd get out early. I'd do before lunch. I'd work out, go to lunch, go back to work, come back and work out, and then we taught classes at night. That bitter or better I've mentioned, and or you attend a class or you play floor hockey. But to answer your question, I tried to stay out of that dorm room as long as I could.
Yep.
If I could crawl back in at the end of the day, shower, and then they have final count, that's the only way I could get through.
Yeah. No, you and I were exactly the same way on that. Staying busy.
Yeah.
I guess some of it was I was institutionalized because I was so much on a routine, but I worked, I worked out, I read, I sent my emails, and I did my phone calls, and I went to bed. And I was usually pretty tired because the stuff I was doing would make me tired. And it's funny you say that about the journal. I didn't do a journal. My daughter sent me a calendar every year that had our family pictures on it. And part of my routine at night would be that I would try to write in my little box in that for the day, my win for the day. And, and if I didn't have a win for the day, which it happens because prison's not anywhere you can have a bad day, but I just let myself have a very, very bad day, no good, very bad day. And I'd write that in there. But one thing I wouldn't let myself do is fill in 2 boxes of bad, because I was scared of falling into that world of prison, Brent, whatever that was going to be. And I didn't want that to happen because, a bad week can turn into a bad month to a bad year, and you kind of lose yourself. So I had kind of a mind hack thing that I was doing to myself daily to make sure that I kept myself feeling like me, not part of where I was. Which is it's some of those things, whether it's the gratitude journal or what I was doing. It's really trying to, I think, continue to want to be feeling like yourself, not feeling like you're falling into something that you don't want to be.
Well, and one of the unwritten dangers in prison is the negativity.
Yeah.
And it starts the moment you're in
Negativity
prison.
lost with hope.
Yes. And it's with inmates and staff.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point, if you're not attuned to that, it is so
Easy to fall into.
Call it institutionalized or what, but it's everywhere. It starts people complaining at breakfast in the morning at 6:15.
Mm-hmm.
Staff, and then lunch, and wherever you're at. And
but you know what I think's interesting about that, though, Bill, is when you get out, you realize that there's a whole bunch of people institutionalized on the outside. They start talking about how negative it is, their job, their marriage, their childhood, their whatever, their health crisis, whatever that is. It just so happens that you become so much more aware of it when you're in prison because there's nowhere else to go. You're captive to that situation.
Yeah. So that's how I got through it.
So you got through it, just staying busy, teaching the GED, kind of fulfilling yourself in that way that you were giving something back, being of service, which I think is such a big deal if you can do that while you were in prison, to do something that you feel like you're giving back. So when you get close to the door, that's a prison term, I guess, but when you're getting close to getting out, what are you thinking?
Well, this was a little different. Mine was because I was there during COVID.
Okay.
So I believe in one of our past conversations, I mentioned I put in for a transfer when I was at Duluth to get closer to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Oxford had a camp in Oxford, Wisconsin, which was much closer. So I put as my two choices, Oxford number 1, Terre Haute number 2. So as the BOP does, they send me to Terre Haute. Closer than Duluth, but still not. And I know that sounds like I'm complaining in prison, so it's not, it's not Club Med or so. Anyway, right. I'm down in Terre Haute, completely different experiences we talked about. The president at the time signs the CARES Act because of COVID, and it was to reduce some of the population in the prisons.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the stipulations of the CARES Act, 50% of your time. No sex, crime in the past, no violence, no major disciplinary. You can serve the remaining portion of your time on home confinement. Mm-hmm. So May of 2020, I had hit my 50% mark. Paperwork in.
Gosh, and that's really kind of right where COVID was, wasn't it? March was when COVID started.
Yeah. So what they did, and I'm getting to a long point to answer your question, is what they did is you had to go 3 weeks in confinement before you went home, and they'd test you a few times. Well, this is how confinement worked. It was one of the wings, and guys would come in and stay there, and they'd bring more guys in. So let's say I was going out in 3 weeks, and you were already in for a week and a half, I'd still come in, and they'd mix us together. Mm. And so it was 3 weeks. I got to work out 2 or 3 times a day. But you knew you were going home. Mm-hmm. So it was, you kind of heard it was bad on the outside, but however bad it was at home, it wasn't as bad as being in.
Sure.
I had a room to myself because there was maybe 15 guys on the wing or 20 guys just waiting to get home. And excited, nervous.
But you really didn't have any idea, though, did you, Bill? Like they would just call your name, say you're up.
Well, you knew what day it was.
Or they did tell you what day it was.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They had to. So what they had to do is they had to do the day you were going to be released. They had to get you in there 3 weeks before.
Okay. So you knew when you were being called to that dorm confinement that you had basically a 3-week span.
Well, so here's
unless you got sick.
Here's a little interesting side note. They had the death house, or they do in Terre Haute. That's where they execute federal prison. The day before I was to go into confinement, they scheduled an execution, and they hadn't. So they took all of us and put us in a garage because they were afraid we were going to take pictures of what. Mm-hmm. So we're in a garage. We ended up being in there almost 24 hours.
Wow.
I get out in the morning. That's the day I'm supposed to go over to sign in. And so my case manager, who was actually a really good guy, I said, hey, I need to get over there today. If I don't, is that going to screw up it's not my 3 weeks? He says, yes. And fortunately, he pushed it through. So he called me, got all my stuff, and went over and started my 3 week in confinement with other guys that had been in for weeks.
Yeah. So you finally, you get out, but you get out released through basically the world is shut down.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, I was, it was a lot better because I wasn't in prison.
Yeah.
So, you know, didn't have to wear shoes in the shower.
Yeah.
I didn't have to get up at 9 for counts.
Yeah.
I had an ankle bracelet. So I served the last 16 months on home confinement, but I was able to work. You know, any of us that have been on home confinement know that
it's confining.
Pardon?
It is confining.
It is confining.
I was on for 6 months, and you know, there's certain things that, you know, it's a mental thing too. But my thing was, we had just gotten an ankle bracelet program at the halfway house, but they still made the 3 calls a night.
Really?
And you had to have a home line, which nobody had. So you had to have it installed in your house. And then a hard line. And then they would call 3 times into the night. And if you didn't answer, then that'd send you back to the halfway house. But the whole time I had an ankle monitor on. So they knew exactly where I was, but it was very confining. And then you had to be in at 9 o'clock and you had to report, you know, if you're going somewhere and all those things. It's home confinement definitely is better than prison for sure. Way. But it's pretty constraining too, because you're really straddling the fence. You know, halfway house is that way and home confinement is that way. You're seeing freedom, but you're not feeling totally free.
Right. Yeah. You couldn't visit other houses. So I had actually had a family member that passed away and they wouldn't let me go to the funeral. And interesting, my case manager asked to speak.
They wouldn't let you go to the funeral while you were on home confinement?
Correct.
Wow.
I think it was because of COVID at the time, not because of but so you had those stipulations that, but again,
stipulations on top of stipulations.
Yeah. But again, it wasn't prison. So, when I became frustrated, I thought about the alternative, and the alternative is I would have been
right.
Yeah.
Great way to balance that out.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I've got dogs at home.
Okay.
But the thing about it is, Bill, what did you do because they tell you get a job, you get out. How did you start working your way back into society?
Well, I've been very blessed in my life, and my family has an engineering and construction business. So in the 7 months when I was on pretrial services, I went to work for them, sales. It's a very specialized niche that I won't bore your viewers with. But one of the things, if you can sell investment services, you can sell practically anything.
That's right.
You're selling an inanimate
sales is sales.
It is. And so I got in, did really well with them. When I got home, there was a job there for me.
That's fantastic.
And, so again, I've been blessed along the way so many times. And so.
How long have you been home?
August of 20.
Okay.
A little over 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. And it sounds like you're doing some things where you're speaking and trying to get out, kind of doing a side hustle of what you like as a passion.
Yeah, the passion is speaking. And so far, Brent, I've been, as I mentioned, at Clemson University, the Rutland Institute for Ethics, Booth School here at the University of Chicago, Fordham University, through a connection, Northern Illinois University, and this January I'll be speaking at Yale, which is kind of exciting.
That's awesome.
I love doing that. I love getting in front of the students.
Yeah, I like that too.
Trying to work that more into the commercial market because I love doing it. Why not make a living doing it? And
sure.
I know it's a different way of offering ethics training. Most ethics training is built around, this is unethical behavior. This is why you shouldn't do it. This is the penalties. And what I learned in my journey for myself is that if you need to understand, I hate the phrase root cause. I've been in in investment business for almost 30 years, and I went through ethics training and compliance training. But you never talked about why what's the pressure? Why do you do that?
Yeah. What makes you do that?
Yeah, and I hope if I would have recognized all that I had, and I say this, if I would have recognized all that I had to be grateful for in my life, none of which had to do with possessions, healthy children,
Yeah.
very supportive mother, spouse,
Yeah.
good parents, family, my health.
Yeah.
Nothing had to do with size of house, summer house, car. I would have recognized I was very wealthy.
Yeah.
And the pressure to do what I did, and it isn't an excuse.
Right.
It was an internal pressure that more is better. And it isn't. And we developed a course. This gentleman and I met early on. He's actually a guy from Chicago originally, but lived up north. Very parallel lives, and we were on the same journey to better ourselves. So through research, through challenging each other, we developed a course that we taught to other inmates. We entitled it "Bitter or Better: Finding Happiness and Gratitude in Prison and Beyond." And I'll tell you what, that was
I like the phrasing of that.
That course ended up being like a laboratory, if you will, because the population, the demographics was about 20% white collar, 15%. The other was, I like to call them non-white collar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to use the term drug, right?
Yeah.
And what we found was, regardless of what got you there was what you knew, right? Mm-hmm. White collar, or they knew the drug distribution or selling. Mm-hmm. That many of us were doing what we were doing, looking for that happiness outside of us. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it was money, sometimes it was power, sometimes it was status. And you find that regardless of what your crime was, a lot of us were chasing the same thing, and that was the happiness outside of me. So if you ever see on my email or some of my blogs, I have a little butterfly as my symbol or as my logo. And one of the things I routinely say is happiness is like chasing a butterfly. If you ever try to chase a butterfly when you're little, no matter how hard you chase that little butterfly gets away. That's why they made butterfly nets, right? Mm-hmm. But if you've ever been outside on a nice sunny day and just relaxing and not moving around, you may have a butterfly land
on you. Yeah.
And that's a proxy for happiness. Mm-hmm. Chase it, you're never going to catch it. Mm-hmm. But you let it come to you, you have a much better chance. And so what we talked about is gratitude. You mentioned willful blindness earlier. Mm-hmm. Learning to be happy. There's an 8-week course in material we put together built around trying to develop and become that awareness. So
that could be something very, very useful inside the prison. And one of the things, this show goes into 800 prisons across the United States, not in federal prisons, but in state prisons. And that's a good message right there, Bill. It really is.
Thank you.
So what do you think, Bill, after all this that you've been through, what do you think's your greatest takeaway through it all?
I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. Mm-hmm. And my actions landed me in prison. But I do believe that there was a purpose for that. And the purpose is what I get out and do today. Mm-hmm. First of all, it made me a better person. If I didn't go out and speak, or I think, I do some work down at Cook County Prison doing readiness training with Augie, one of your past guests.
Augie, just a few episodes ago.
Yeah. So
second opportunity.
Yep. Second opportunity, doing great things. If I didn't do any of it, and I just focused on myself, it made me, I needed that break. Now the regret is the baggage that it took along with it, hurting my family, my children, my client, my business partner. I wish I could separate those two. Can't. But right. The takeaway on this is it made me a better person, and I needed an adult timeout. I don't know if I needed time all the time. I shouldn't have. If I didn't want to do the time, I shouldn't have.
But you're saying it gave you time to reflect and recharge your mind into what you wanted to be.
Exactly.
The person you wanted to be.
Yeah. And the person that my family deserved, the person that society deserved. And I also get out and speak. So I wouldn't have been doing that. I wouldn't have been going down speaking in front of students. And as you speak, you hope if you can affect one person in that room,
Yeah.
just one, then it was well worth it.
Yeah.
And
And I think, and I hope there's more of us out there that take our journey and share with others, because I think it can really, I think it does a couple of different things. One, we have a story and experience to share that can help others, I think. And two, I think the more that people understand what this ex-felon life is, that there's maybe a chance that they'll give more people second opportunities, second chances, because they understand the experience better. Because the reentry world is really tough. And, I probably am closer to it than most, because I get to talk to so many people that are going through it, that are coming out. But it's, for most people, I think the biggest surprise, nightmare of being taken down, nightmare of going to prison, but the kind of unfocused thing about it, or unknown thing, is the reentry part, because that's the part you got to figure out. No matter what, you're going to live with it the rest of your life. That's just the way that we are in the United States. You will be an ex-felon. You will wear it around your neck, but that doesn't mean your life stops. It just means that you got to figure that out, know your story, and trudge forward, and you can make it work. I mean, you're making it work, Bill, and you're also finding time to do things that you're passionate about, to help other people and make a living. And it's not easy, but you're figuring it out. And I think that's one of the things about this show, is whether you've gone to prison or you haven't gone to prison, life can be tough, but you can figure it out as long as you step forward. You step through the unknowns, the scary stuff, and usually that gives you more confidence to keep stepping.
Yeah, very well said.
Well, Bill, man, I really appreciate this conversation. Since we got on the phone and talked, and before we got on today, it's just you and I share a lot of different things, and the way you tell your story and the authenticity that you come at it, I think a lot of people will get a lot from how you are living and how you're telling it.
Well,
So I
thank you.
appreciate it.
As you just mentioned, if you can get out there and help somebody that watches this, then it was worth the investment.
Absolutely. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, Bill, for speaking, how would they do that?
The easiest way to do it is through my website, which is
Okay.
billcarlson.com, and an email on there. You can go and see my keynote address I did at Clemson.
Yep.
I have probably 30 or 35 blogs I've written on all sorts of topics around living in ethical excellence, important of gratitude, happiness, ways to practice that. And you can get a hold of me through there, and be happy to chat.
Perfect.
See where it goes. Or if you just want to talk,
Yeah.
I love connecting with people. So
Connecting's great. And talking about gratitude, I want to thank Homestead Financial here. They have all the fancy equipment here that allows me to do my podcast. And if anybody's got home mortgage needs, Greg Afdiev is your guy. He knows it backwards and forwards. If you're looking for a book out there, I've got one, Nightmare Success. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you got time, I know it's a hassle, but the reviews on Apple, they help grow the show. Check out my new website, BrentCassity.com. I spell it wrong. Spell it with a T, not a D. And as I used to say to my people when I was writing my emails back from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. Bill Carlson, thank you so much for today. I appreciate it, man.
thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Nightmare Success, in and out.